Lesson Objective 3. Download and configure the iForm app. To get started, there are 3 different iForm apps that are available on the App Store. The first is the iForm app. This is available on both iOS and Android devices. This was the original app that we developed and is most commonly used by our end users. This is because when you log into the iForm app, once you're logged in, you don't have to log back out or log back in again. So it keeps you logged in, which makes it for a very smooth data collection process, especially if the user's making use of the same device every single day. The second app that we have available is iForm ES. This has an extra layer of security, that extra security that ES stands for. This is great if you're planning on building a project that is HIPAA compliant. The extra security launches password protection on the app every single time the app is launched, or if you've configured a timeout, then the user will have to put in the password again after that time has expired. The next and final app that we have available is iForm Kiosk. You'll notice this is on an iPad only. What's great about this app is you're able to set up a device and configure what we refer to as kiosk mode so that anyone can come in and fill out a form or a few forms without having to do logins. This is extremely helpful if you have a booth at an event or if you want to set an iPad up in the front of your office for everyone who comes in. Now, as we go through the next few steps, we're going to assume that you have downloaded the iForm app, and I'm going to walk you through the different configurations that we have within the settings. If you haven't downloaded the iForm app yet, please go do so by clicking on the link from the Google Play Store or the link in the App Store. Both of these are listed as resources within Zerion Academy. Additionally, if you just go into the app stores, you should be able to find iForm. During these next few steps, I'm going to show you how to configure the iForm app, and on my screen I will be showing an iPad. If you're using another iOS device, or if you're using an Android device, what you see on your screen should be very similar. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to update our server name to point to our dedicated database. This is always done on your initial login. Each username is tied to a dedicated database. This can be like my training.iFormBuilder.com example here. It also could be your company name. Or if you've just signed up for a trial, the dedicated database is going to point to app.iFormBuilder.com. So here is my device. I'm going to assume that I've just downloaded the iForm app from the App Store. I've put in my username, my password, as well as the server name or dedicated database that I'm logging into. I'm then going to click Sign In. Now, whenever you sync your device, you are going to get a little report letting you know what was just done upon that sync. If this is your first time logging in, you should see any forms that have been assigned to your username. If it's blank, then either log into your iFormBuilder account and go under Forms and Form Assignment and assign some forms to your username, or ask your admin to assign some forms. So as I mentioned, right now we're just going to go into the settings and configure our app for the best experience for our data collection needs. To go into the settings, you'll click the button on the left-hand side. We'll often call this a hamburger menu. If you want to find a little bit more information out about the account you're logged into, you can click on Account. This will just give you your account details. I'm going to hit the back button to return to our main settings screen. Next thing I ask of you is to click Settings. Within our settings, we start at the top with our sync settings. This sync is referencing the refreshing, essentially, of the iForm app. By default, most of these settings are turned on. Now, depending on what type of data collection process you have, you may want to go through and turn some of these off. The first setting that we see up here is Sync on Start. What that means is every time you launch the iForm app, the app will sync. Now, if you are going to be collecting data mainly in the offline environment, you may consider turning this off. This way, the user doesn't have to wait for the device to try to sync when they know they don't have Wi-Fi or cellular connection. Underneath that, our second sync setting is Auto Sync. What this means is if the user is done completing a record, so they filled out everything, and they hit the Done or Submit button at the bottom, Auto Sync will automatically sync that record to the cloud. Again, if you're in an offline environment, you may not want the device to try to sync to the cloud until you're ready. By turning both of these top two settings off, you will have to educate your users on how to manually sync the device when they do have that Wi-Fi or cellular connection. If you're always going to have connection, you may choose to have one or both of these turned on. Next on our list of sync settings, we see Delete on Upload. What that means is that when the record has successfully been synced to the cloud, it will be deleted from the device. Now, this is a setting that can be overwritten on a form level. So if for some reason you do have a form that has very sensitive data on it and you're not sure what setting your user has for delete on upload, this can be configured on your form level so that it'll automatically delete on an upload or automatically stay on the device even after the upload has been completed. Our next sync setting is Download Records. Now, as we go through this training, you're going to hear me say the term record and form. Form is just the questions that you have when you open and launch the form. It doesn't contain any data. Whereas a record is a form that is either completed or partially completed and has been assigned to the user. So if you want to allow the user to have records assigned to them, maybe you as an admin, you're going to start a record on the web portal and then assign it to your user, then you need to make sure Download Records is turned on. The next setting we have is to validate form structures. So what this implies is it'll sync your device and make sure all of the forms that have subform elements or option list elements, that all of the attachments have been downloaded. So it's almost like it's rechecking everything to make sure all the appropriate pieces have been downloaded. And lastly, you'll notice we have Face ID. So if you don't see Face ID listed here, that means it might not be available on your device, or we haven't configured it for that device type yet. Now I'm just going to go through a few more of these. The first one I want to point out here is under Appearance, you'll notice you can choose a font type as well as the font size. When it comes to the font size, just keep in mind if you really increase the size, you might end up cutting off some of the text for the question. So before you go out in the field to collect data, make sure you check your form and see that the questions are showing in their entirety if you have increased the font size. Now if we go down a little bit further here, we have our element settings. If you click element settings, this is referencing our image element and our drawing element. Both of these are media elements. Media elements can take a little bit longer to upload to the cloud if you've captured, let's say, 20, 30 photos, and if you have a larger image size. So if you're going to allow a lot of photos to be captured, keep in mind what size you have configured. I think medium looks great, but if you do need to have a larger size for reporting, then definitely test it out on your forms and make sure that it is a very fluid experience and you don't receive an error message saying that it's timed out while you're trying to sync your device because the images are too large. Another setting that we have is move and scale. This allows you to pinch an image or drawing, and if you do that, it does change the size of the photo. So if you're going to be using these photos and reports, keep that in mind and maybe turn off move and scale if you don't want to have different size photos for the reports. Lastly, in the image element, you'll see the option to save a copy in an album. Once a record has been synced to the cloud, that media file will be stored within iFormBuilder or a designated media storage location. So knowing that, you may not want to have all these photos on your device as well. Lastly, with the drawing element, we have implemented a new drawing element the last few years, and I highly suggest that you turn that on to make use of some of our latest features. At this time, I'm going to hit the back button and scroll down to another setting here. We have our API sync settings. If you're going to make use of our lookup element as well as our multi-photo element, you'll need to have these last two API settings turned on. You'll notice by default, I have all of mine turned on. This makes use of the latest API as well as allows me to use the latest elements that we've added within iFormBuilder. If you have more questions on these API settings, I do have a help desk article that you'll be able to reference within Zerion Academy. And lastly, I've hit the back button. There's a few more settings that we have located on the bottom, one being Mapbox. If you're interested in integrating with Mapbox and having Mapbox views within the iForm app, please contact your customer success manager and they'll help you get this started right away. The last setting we'll go through here is our sync threshold. What this sync threshold does is it allows you to configure a certain time that the device can sync before it stops. So this is especially helpful if you're trying to collect data in a remote area and you don't want the device to sync longer than 3 minutes because you want to allow the user to continue collecting data. So by putting a timer on where it can only sync for 3 minutes or whatever the value is that you choose, then the sync process will stop wherever it left off for those records, and the next time you plan on syncing, it'll pick up that process up. This is again helpful if you're in a remote area and maybe you have 20 or 30 records you're trying to sync to the cloud and you don't want to wait that long to then collect more data. So you're able to put in a threshold. At this point, let's go ahead and hit the back button, and I'm going to talk you through just a few more configurations. So one is under our support and troubleshooting. If you'll go in here, you'll see that you can send feedback to our team. You can go visit our help center or community support. You can also do an emergency database upload. This is especially helpful if you've been trying to sync your records to the cloud and you're receiving error messages and it's just not working. By doing the emergency database upload, then it'll send that database of your iForm app to our developers, and they will see what was wrong with the data, but also place it into your account, so you're not losing any data. The last setting that we see in here is the clean local database. What this does is it wipes out everything within the iForm app and then we'll re-download it. This can be really helpful if you have a lot of records on your device that you just created for testing and you don't want to go through each form and delete them. Now I'm going to exit out of the support and troubleshooting, go down to our external hardware. If you are integrating with some of the external hardware options that we have available, you're able to connect the Bluetooth here. I'm going to hit the back button again, and the last piece I want to point out here is the logout. So each username can be logged into up to 3 different devices. So if you're logged in on your iOS, your Apple phone, your iPad, and then your Android device, and then you try to log into a 4th device, you may receive an error message saying maximum number of licenses reached, contact your company admin. Your admin will then be able to go in and log you out of those devices and free up those device licenses. However, if you know you're going to be switching devices, we strongly suggest you just get into the habit of going into your settings and tapping log out. So that's just here at the bottom. Go ahead, tap log out, and then it would free that license back to the cloud. The last thing I want to show you here is if you hit the back button, it brings you to your iForm home screen. At this point, you can refresh by tapping the button in the right-hand corner, or you can pull down on the screen.